Lisa Ingalls Witter, and I'm here to help you awaken to the true you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode where we're going to talk about why spiritual awakening is so hard. Oh my God. How many times have you thought to yourself on the path, like, oh my God, this is way harder than it should be or than I thought it should be? You know, um, the truth is that the nature of the path is hard. The nature of being a spiritual seeker is hard, but I want to make a distinction uh, about what we mean by hard. Let's make like two different distinctions about the word hard, because it is hard work when you're on the path. So in that sense, hard is normal. That's very normal. If you're experiencing the spiritual path as being hard, it's totally normal. But if it's hard work because you're not making progress, that gives us a little bit more information, right? So we have two ways that we're distinguishing hard. One, it's hard just because the nature of the path is hard. That's normal. Or two, the path is hard because, hey, I'm not making progress. How many of us have been in that boat before? I know I have, where I've been like, what the heck? I've been doing everything and I feel like I'm making absolutely no progress. And this is actually good information for you, because I know so many people just give up. They give up on their practices. Maybe they say, you know what, screw it. Meditation doesn't work. Or I've tried affirmations and they don't work. I've tried praying and it doesn't work. If that sounds familiar to you, I want you to consider that is it's hard work because you're not making progress is actually information for you. If you're not making progress in your spiritual path, on the path to awakening, it's often because of how you're doing things. And this is about practice, right? And it brings me to this concept of practice, because if we do our practice mechanically, I've talked about this before. If we just show up and we're going through our practice, but we're not really being present, we're not being aware and having intention with our practice, we're not really going to make progress. So we have to make sure that our practice is not being done mechanically. It's being done with some awareness, some presence, and definitely some intention and focus as well. So I've said this often. It's not about doing certain things. It's about doing things in a certain way, which takes practice. And our practice requires us to be on it, to not be doing it mechanically. So that is my first tip. If you're having the experience of not making spiritual progress, it may be because you're doing your practices mechanically and not with that deep type of intention. Second problem that comes up for many, many people, and this is something that I've found isn't talked about so much in the New Age spiritual world and the spirituality world, but it is talked about all the time amongst or throughout all spiritual traditions. And that is the idea of ethics. We have, in Christianity, we have the Ten Commandments. In yoga and Hinduism, you have the yamas and the niyamas, which are sort of like their version of the 10 commandments. You have the 5 niyamas and the 5 yamas. And so what I want to say, without going deep into ethics, because it's critical when you're on the spiritual path, you will literally be halted in your spiritual awakening if you are not living your life ethically. So ethics gives us our guidelines for controlling our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And if we don't have mastery in our thoughts, if we don't have mastery over our words, if we don't have mastery over our actions, which are all outer types of experiences will never have mastery over the more subtle inner states that lead us to spiritual awakening. And, I need to say here that being on the path is this, there's two things that are happening when you're on the path. You have the outer work that needs to be done, and you have the inner, more subtle work that needs to be done. It's what I love about the path of yoga and Ashtanga yoga is it really, Patanjali set out this beautiful path, this map actually, of how to attain spiritual awakening. And it begins with sort of these outer practices, and then it moves to the innermost practices. So what we need to know is that if we don't have ethics, if we're not living our life ethically in our outer world, it's going to be very hard to move into those more subtle realms where true spiritual awakening happens. So that would be another place to look if you're like, oh my God, why am I not making progress, or why is this so hard? Look at your ethics. And I might do another episode just purely on ethics, because it's so critical to your path of awakening your true you. And then another thing that happens so often in the new age spiritual world is that we're being taught, and the message is being given, that it's easy to some degree, like anybody can be enlightened, anybody can be fulfilled. All you need to do is read this book or take this workshop. So we're being sold on an idea that actually isn't true. And that idea is, well, I guess it's two ideas. One, that it's easy, or at least it's doable and attainable without too much effort. And that number two, you can do it by yourself. And that's what I really want to focus on for this third point, is that when you're on the spiritual path, and if you're trying to do it alone, you're reading books, you're going to courses, it's not going to do it. You actually need a teacher, and you need a community, a sangha, as they say in Buddhism, a sangha. We all need sangha. And the reason why you need that should be fairly obvious to you, but we can't see our own blind spots when we're on a path to awakening. And when we decide to step onto that path, we're going to be thrown a whole bunch of crap, right? And we're not going to know on our own. We don't have the capacity on our own to handle that crap. And having a really good teacher, a really good guide is critical. They're going to help you see your blind spots, and they're going to help you see what you can't see about yourself. And also, we need a community. We need a community of like-minded people who are on the same path, following the same. If you're following a particular tradition, if you're on the yogic path, you want to be on the path with other yogis, Buddhism, on the path with other Buddhists. You want to be with other people who are on the same path, because those people, that community, who can also see you and reflect back to you, but a lot of them may have been on the path longer than you and may be able to show you the way. So you cannot do this alone. If you're attempting to do this alone, please find a teacher, find a community. So that is what I wanted to give you for today. Again, to just a short little recap. If you're wondering why spiritual awakening is so hard, or why you're not making progress on the spiritual path, number one, check out your practice. How are you doing your practice? Are you doing it mechanically, or are you doing it with real intentions, presence, and awareness? Number two, look at your ethics. Are you living your life ethically? If you're not sure, well, then that would be a place to look. Are you living your thoughts, your words, and your actions in your outer life ethically? So that would be number two. And number three is, are you trying to do it alone, or do you have a teacher and a community to support you? So hopefully that gives you a few little pointers. There are so many more, but I thought that those would be three that maybe you haven't thought of yet. If you like this information and everything that I'm sharing here, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is just Lisa Ingalls, and or like my Facebook page, which is Lisa Ingalls Witter. Both of those places we can be together in community, and we can support each other along this path of awakening and finding out who we really are, our path to our true selves. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Namaste.